Why are Gen Z protests rising all over the world? Why is the youth so unhappy? We have been seeing constant violent protests in Nepal, Morocco, Madagascar, Kenya, but today we are going to be focusing on the case of Tanzania. So basically, Generation Z are all the people who are born between the years 1997 and 2012. This is the most commonly accepted definition of Generation Z, and these are very young people. They are people in the early 20s, in the late 20s. Then why are they so unhappy that they are indulging in the violent protests almost all over the world? We are going to understand what is happening in Tanzania, and then we'll draw some parallels. So let's do that. But before we dive into the details, I'll just quickly tell you that there is this new launch for you, which is the Studio GS Foundation live online course. This course is a complete UPSC preparation kit for you because both syllabus of prelims and mains is going to be covered at a very affordable price of only rupees 24,999. Both prelims and main syllabus at 24,999 only, and you can even avail a special discount on this already discounted fee if you apply this coupon code, which is SALONI, and then you will be able to get the maximum discount on this fee. So don't wait, admissions are open. You also have 3 different mediums to choose from: English, Hindi and Hinglish. So choose whichever medium you're the most comfortable in, and for any further information, please call us at 87501. And please note that this course is going to be a completely free course for you if you are planning to join the offline foundation batch at Drishti in future, because this fee that you see over here is going to be adjusted in the fees of our offline foundation batch. So for any more inquiry, call us at the number that's given on board, and you can also download the Drishti Learning app and enroll into this course. Now let's talk about what's happening in Tanzania. So Gen Z protests that we are talking about, they erupted in late October 2025 when the general elections were ongoing in the country. So there were charges that these elections were not fair. The opposition was not given a fair chance to conduct their rallies. There were curfews, they were taken into prisons, etc. So all these things were happening, and that is why there were allegations that opposition was not given enough chance, and the entire election that we saw in Tanzania, they were unfair. So it all started in October 2025, and this election was expected to reinforce continuity under President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Instead, these protests erupted, and the protests very soon they turned violent in nature also, and till date they are ongoing. So we'll focus on the reasons why these protests erupted, why did the youth come into picture, and why is the youth unhappy. But before we do that, Tanzania as a country also becomes very important for us because it is in news, and some static information can be asked about Tanzania, especially in our prelims examination. So let's look at that also. This is Tanzania. Tanzania is a country in East Africa. In fact, this is the largest country. This is the largest country by area in East Africa. And you see some important islands over here like Pemba, Zanzibar. These are also part of Tanzania. And what do you recall when you hear Zanzibar? Zanzibar is the place where we have the offshore campus. Offshore campus of which IIT? IIT Madras. So this is also a part of Tanzania. And then Tanzania has Dar es Salaam, which is the administrative capital of Tanzania. And then there is also Dodoma, which is the legislative capital of Tanzania. So we have this information about Tanzania. Then there are also some important lakes over here. Towards the north, you will see Lake Victoria, which is the source for River Nile. Then here you see Lake Tanganyika. Towards the west, there is Lake Tanganyika. And then down south, there is Lake Nyasa. So all these things are over here. And then there is also an important mountain somewhere over here, which is Mount Kilimanjaro. Mount Kilimanjaro is also in Tanzania. So all this information, static information related to Tanzania. And if we talk about the partnership that India has with Tanzania, so you know India has different levels of partnerships with different countries. With Tanzania, we have a strategic partnership. Strategic partnership. In fact, India is one of the largest export destinations for Tanzania. So we have good trade for with Tanzania also, and Tanzania exports a lot of its products to India. So we have a strategic partnership with Tanzania. So all the static information is also important for Tanzania. Now let's come back to our topic and understand what are the reasons that the youth is so unhappy in Tanzania. So the most important reason over here was the increased youth unemployment. There is a high percentage of youth unemployment. So the education that the youth is receiving is not translating into employment. This is the biggest issue that the youth has. The elections went unfair, and what you will have to understand over here, that there was no one reason because of which the youth actually got indulged into this entire activity. It is a series of accumulated frustrations. There were a lot of things that we'll discuss over here. First and foremost being that there is a high rate of youth unemployment. If we talk about people aged between 18 to 35 years, then there is an unemployment of 26% in these people. So this is a very high rate of unemployment. The education that these people are receiving, they're receiving secondary education, higher secondary education, everything, but that is not translating into real jobs. This is one problem. The second problem is that most of the jobs are in the informal sector. Informal sector only. Some 80% of the jobs are in the informal sector only. A, they are not getting jobs, and B, whatever jobs they are getting, they are mostly in the informal sector. So they're not getting proper skilled organized sector jobs, and that is why most of the people, they are moving towards self-employment, because they find self-employment to be better than working in the informal sector. So this is another challenge over here. Then there is a high cost of living in the country. There is a high cost of living in the country. There are no jobs, people do not have enough money, and then on top of that, there is a high cost of living, high cost of food, fuel, housing, etc. So there's a lot of inflation also in the country. The cost of living is also very, very high, which the people over there cannot afford, because there's corruption, there are a lot of things. That is why all these accumulated frustrations led the youth to actually jump into the picture. And then there was also internet shutdown. So what the Gen Z was actually doing in order to spread their messages, in order to have solidarity, to spread solidarity, they were making use of social media. So there was also internet shutdown that these people had to face, and that's why all these things, they turned violent, they turned ugly, because people felt that they were being suppressed, their voices were being suppressed, and that's why these protests also turned violent, and till date they continue to do so. They're spreading in the nearby areas also, and they continue to do so. So by and large, this is the whole issue that the youth of Tanzania is facing. There is a very high unemployment, they're not proper formal sector jobs for them, there's a high cost of living, there is corruption, and then there are also technological restrictions that are being imposed on them. And largely these are the major issues that the youth everywhere in the world are facing. Wherever we see these Gen Z protests happening, most of the times it is because of these things only. Nepal also we saw nepotism and etc., corruption and a lot of things, unemployment. So all these things, all this accumulated frustration is leading this youth to basically indulge into such activities. However, it must be understood that violence will not be the solution over here, but again there have to be proper diplomatic channels, proper dialogic channels where all these things can happen, conversations can happen, demands can be exchanged, and then they can be taken into consideration. So this is what should be done by the government in Tanzania also. So let's see what happens over there. If the protests, they'll actually subside, when will they subside, how the situation turns out to be. But that was all for today's discussion. If you enjoyed the discussion that we had over here, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Drishti IAS English. Now let's look at a practice question for prelims. Recently, Tanzania witnessed widespread youth protests. Which of the following were major reasons behind these protests? 1. Disputed general elections and restrictions on opposition parties. 2. High youth unemployment and lack of economic opportunities. 3. Rising cost of living and inflation pressures. 4. Restrictions on political expression and internet shutdowns. Select the correct answer. A. 1 and 2 only. B. 1, 2 and 3 only. C. 1, 2, 3 and 4 or D. 2, 3 and 4 only. Please attempt this question and provide your answers in the comment section. Thank you for watching.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.